What's happening, guys? Welcome to an episode of Jester Radio. I probably got the South African Tim Kennedy on the podcast today. Richie, Quan, bro, thank you so much for coming through. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for having me, man.
Of course, man. I've actually been told many times, every time I put up a question on Instagram, I ask people, who should I get on? Your name always comes up.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
Yeah,
That's
so
really nice
yours is literally, I would say you won another 5 people, or the name that just constantly and consecutively just comes up.
That's great. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I think you're doing an amazing thing for actually many different fields. But I think obviously Instagram, you kind of promote all those fields. But I think obviously mainly is your Brazilian jiu-jitsu and your combat sport coaching.
Yeah.
So let's just, start at the beginning. What got you into combat sports in general?
Like anyone, well, I would say anyone, but I've always enjoyed martial arts. So I grew up with old Kung Fu movies, Bruce Lee, my Asian heritage. So from a young age, I can't even remember when, but since I can remember, I've always been interested in violence, specifically martial arts. And obviously, as I've got older, I've understand what martial arts is and what levels of violence there is. And I was only able to start martial arts when I left the country and I went to Malaysia and Thailand. My family wasn't a big fan of martial arts. If it was up to me, I would have started much earlier, 4 or 5, but I started at about 9 years old when I moved to Thailand, Malaysia. And that was mainly just because it's their rugby. It's their national sport, Muay Thai. So it was kind of more acceptable and it was easy for me to kind of fall into.
And your parents, obviously, are they Malaysian or
they're South African. My mom's actually from Zimbabwe. Okay. My dad's Chinese, second generation here, and they live in Malaysia right now, yeah.
And how long were you there for? And obviously your exposure was initially to Muay Thai, and how did it progress from there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Asia. So from 9 all the way to about 18, and then I moved to the US. So majority of my life, especially my teens, I grew up in Asia.
And then why'd you move back to South Africa?
Uneducated on what visas are. Being a young man, you don't understand the right admin processes, understanding the South African passport, and, progressing for the future. When I was in the US, I just thought, well, I'm here, I'm never going to leave. Not applying for my green card properly, and so forth. Stuff you live and you learn. And unfortunately, I had to come back to my home, but wasn't really my home. Yeah.
But you since have made it your home. How long have you been here? And
I've been back for about 15 years, just over 15 years. And yeah, I would say, I've been offered jobs overseas already and declined it because this is my home now. Not only that, I feel a great responsibility for me to stay here, to educate people on mixed martial arts, to bring mixed martial art up in Africa, educate people on violence, and just learn as much as I can in this country as well. But I love South Africa. I'm a South African to the heart now, even though I'm very proud of my Asian heritage. I wouldn't leave here.
So you said educated violence, and that's obviously also on your Instagram bio. So, obviously martial arts in the competitive form is, obviously very controlled. And, when people think violence, automatically most people think negatively.
Yes.
But obviously you're trying to, and it's not just martial arts, there's other forms of violence that you're also trying to master and busy mastering. So do you want to explain the other form and the other things that you do? Yeah,
so we call it 3 pillars of violence. You got your weapons, your hand-to-hand, and your medical. And in between then, there's a whole lot of other assets towards that. But educated violence, in a nutshell, is having a system to understand the different levels of violence. Most people, I would say 90%, especially nowadays, in our generation, the generations that are growing, violence is kind of taboo. People don't understand violence. And then the people that do think they know that violence, they don't actually know what violence is. The world's very uncensored but censored. And now you can be a weak person but a strong person, where in reality, violence doesn't really care about the weak. It only cares about the strong. And if you're weak, you're going to lose. That type of, it's black and white. Nowadays, nothing's black and white. There's always a gray area. So educated violence, it's a big spectrum in my life. In the martial arts world, for me, it's providing the right information to a student. I feel that 90% of coaches out there are what I call drill sergeants. They're not coaches. Anyone can take their job and do their job. There's only a handful of people that can actually provide and transfer the right knowledge to an individual. And that's a proper skill. It's like when you go to university, you listen to a professor. His job is to transfer knowledge. Every day he gets there, he has a syllabus. He has to teach every day a syllabus to the individual and provide you with the right information on a topic. Nowadays, it's kind of people are not really understanding on what a real coach is, be it in any form of violence. For instance, if it's martial arts, a guy just telling you to hit the bag, or coach, I need to get fit, run on the road, or I need to get better, spar more. Like, that's not very educated. Anyone can do that. So what makes you different compared to a general guy that says the same thing? It's transfer of knowledge, is actually understanding violence and making the guy better and finding what the holes are and making them better. Doing the same thing over and over again. I see it every day. So that's why I call them drill sergeants, because that's what a drill sergeant does. He screams, he shouts, he plays with a stopwatch, he maybe motivates you. He's like a cheerleader. And there's too many cheerleaders in the world and not enough coaches.
So your coaching philosophy, and obviously you've worked closely with Don, but obviously now you didn't. How much work did you do with Don now? Because obviously him being in Cape Town. Because obviously I've seen a lot of you guys, a lot of videos and pictures of you guys working together.
So Don's part of the original squad. So you must understand, he was with me for 6 years. How I teach is a system, it's Coach Quan system. So once you're in that system, you kind of understand, it's like a textbook. You understand what and how things need to be done. A guy like Don Madge doesn't need to be taught how to fight. He's been fighting his whole life. So once you're in my system, I can speak to you over the phone, video, I fly down. You kind of be immersed in something much bigger than a drill sergeant of having to be there every day and tell the fighter, you need to train at 2 o'clock. He's a professional. He knows he needs to train twice or 3 times a day. He knows what he needs to do. It's more about someone there providing the right knowledge for a specific opponent or specific competition and that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, Don, I've always been Don's corner. I took him when no one wanted him, made him a champion, got him to the UFC. Amazing athlete. So a lot of my guys are like that. The guys that are in Joburg are fortunate to be able to train with me every day. The guys that are not, we still train with new technology, as well as I go down and see them, keep up to date with what they need to know and how they need to transfer that knowledge.
So you obviously wanting to transfer knowledge and not just be a drill sergeant. Did you have someone in your life that was either a drill sergeant or someone that was an amazing coach?
Unfortunately, I earn still today for a proper coach. I flew all over the world. That's my story. I trained at every big mixed martial art facility, boxing coach, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling. I've been to every continent, any big gym that you can think of. I've been there. I've trained there. So my mentor right now is Henry Hoof. He's one of the best, or the best, you could say, mixed martial art coaches right now. But I don't have that coach. I'm not looking for it anymore because I feel I've done my work. I've got my system. It works. I know how to study. Most people don't know how to study. The art of learning, they don't know that. They think they know, but they don't. So I feel like I've really understood the art of learning and the art of transferring knowledge. So with new technology now, for instance, back in the days, I had to fly to the US or Brazil or wherever, Europe, and spend 4 weeks in the gym shadowing coaches in all the training sessions to actually understand what was going on. Now I can sign online, check a seminar, sign on for a meeting, speak to the guy. Information is so easy if you know how to use it right now. Vice versa with weight loss cutting coaches and rehydration coaches. I don't need to fly to them anymore. We can literally have a Zoom talk online, and that information can be transferred. As well as, like, because I know what I'm looking for as well now, I can watch something and instantly pick it up. Okay, that's how he does it, or that's why he's doing it, and so forth. So it's a bit of a different era right now for me.
And it's also, you know, a lot of people, either you can admit what you don't know and learn something, or you can just be stuck in your ways and say, like, I know everything. And I mean, you're always going to learn. There's the ability to learn way more. There's a finite amount of things that you can learn compared to things that you've ever learned.
100%. I mean, ego is the enemy. Everyone knows that. Just that people don't want to admit it. For me, my guys know, like, if they ask me a question, and I don't know it, I will say, but I don't know it right now. You know, give me a day or two and I'll come back to you with an answer. So that's how I kind of work, because I'll go and do research on whatever needs to be done and get the information and bring it back. I won't pretend like I know something and give the wrong information or make myself look like a retard, and the students know that. So I've been like that for a long time, trial and error, and that's why I think I've, you know, created this system where I'm able to do and answer what students need, as well as I've had the most experience in the country, in the whole African continent, in my sport. No one's done what I've done, especially on the big stage.
And you mentioned death of the ego, and especially in combat sport, there has to be death of the ego. Yeah. Because, you know, Don, yourself, both of you, everyone who's, you know, let's just say a professional competed at the world stage, there's someone better than them. 100%. There's someone that is going to put them in their place, and it's impossible to pretend to be the best or tell yourself you're the best or act like you are the best, because you can't, and you're going to be humbled. And that is because I recently, I mean, I gave myself 11 weeks to do a fight. It was a white collar fight at Peter Smith's gym. Yeah. And it was the most humbling experience I've ever done in my entire life. It was, and it's also taught me so many life, and that's exactly why I did it. You know, I did it to learn something new. I did it to push myself out of my comfort zone. And, you know, any form of combat is exactly that. There's nothing more lonely actually on earth
100%
than fighting.
Violence is the equalizer. Violence will humble you. And that's the beauty of violence, you know. Every man that comes into this world thinks, for some reason, because of ego, that they can fight, that they can shoot a gun, that they can be an alpha, not understanding that you need skills to do all of these things. And if you haven't been provided, or you haven't gone to look for these skills, how can you be so naive to tell yourself that, I know violence, I know how to fight, I know how to box, wrestle, do BJJ, I could take that gun, I know how to shoot a gun, I know how the tactics of violence, but you don't. And what the beauty of, say, Brazilian jiu-jitsu or a boxing white-collar fight, I mainly use the example of Brazilian jiu-jitsu because every day is a fight. Every day you're getting on and you're sparring, you've got a grown man that makes you give up. You know, in a striking art, it's not, you don't really give up. You know, the round ends or you get knocked out, and training shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't be getting knocked out in training. But in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and wrestling, you mentally and physically have to go, shit, but okay, you're the alpha, you win. I tap out. For a man to do that, it changes your mindset, exactly what you're saying. And that's why doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu or wrestling every single day, you start understanding the levels of violence and what real violence is and what another man can do to another man with the right skill sets, and what 90% of society out there don't understand, how badly hurt they can get in a situation.
Yeah. And it also, I think that's also where the mindset comes in, because I was actually reading yesterday about rats, and rats will happily pull a lever to go into another area to wrestle another rat to try assert dominance. Once the bigger rat has asserted dominance, then the smaller rat invites the bigger rat to play. once the bigger rat obviously says, okay, cool, let's play. If that bigger rat doesn't allow the smaller rat to win 30% of their play fights, the little rat will never play again with the big rat.
100%.
But in human nature, and human nature, we want to give up after we've been like wanting to tap out all the time. But with BJJ, you got to come back tomorrow and do it all again, even if you lose every time.
You're resetting your ego every time. You're back on the mat the next day. You're improving your skills. You want to get better. All of a sudden, in 6 months, the guy that was dominating you, you may be not dominating him. It's a true sense of understanding what dominance is and killing your ego. And like I said, wrestling or grappling arts are the oldest violent sport there is. In any history and culture, there's always a grappling or wrestling art for a man to assert his own dominance on another man.
And why BJJ? Because obviously you started as Muay Thai, but why have you now made your main focus
on grappling? So for me, it's either contact or non-contact, so striking or a grappling sport. Grappling sports for me are the ultimate of violence. I feel that in striking, you've seen it before, a guy can dip his head, throw an overhand, and knock a guy out. In grappling, it's very technical. It hardly ever happens like that. A guy with highly skilled usually can easily dominate you, especially with a guy that doesn't know it. He can literally talk to you while dominating you. In most sports, that doesn't really happen. I also feel physical attributes come into play as well. But if you're mixing grappling with weaponry and stuff, it becomes a different level of violence. So for me, coming from a striking background, and I was a very hard-hitted striker in terms of striking, is Muay Thai is the ultimate. You can elbow and knee guys. There's nothing worse than that. Going into a grappling sport and literally getting humbled. Nobody grabbing you and you literally can't do anything. You feel helpless. That helplessness, it comes with grappling.
And how do you, with your, transfer that knowledge of dealing with that helplessness and dealing with, obviously it's
systems. It's like a textbook. A coach needs to be a textbook. You open the book, you got chapter 1. Usually chapter 1 to 3 is your fundamentals of what you're learning. And then it goes into your intermediate, your advanced, understanding the actual program. Most people don't know how to coach. And it irritates me because they pretend like they do. They're drill sergeants. They can't correct you on something. They'll rather just say, oh, hit the bag or you're doing it wrong. I mean, you listen to guys cornering. It's a joke. I wish there was more cameras on the corners and shown after fights, because it would be hilarious, the stuff that you hear these guys, punch him or get up, take him down, kick him. Like, these are so uneducated views of what commands you need to give to an athlete, yet they're being given by a guy that's supposedly an amazing coach. There's no structure in anything. It's like YouTube training. Coaches just come on the day and, we're going to do this. Next day, we're going to do that. There's no structure on an athlete. Also, there's no looking at an athlete and going, you need to do X, Y, and Z for your style. A lot of guys coach athletes the way that they wish or want to fight. Not looking at an athlete and going, you're good at this, your attributes are like this, your body type's like this. These are the tools that will actually be better for you in a combat sport. They'll rather just go, well, I like fighting like this, so this is how you should fight. And if you don't fit in that box, then there's something wrong with you, not the coach. That's what irritates me.
And now, you experiencing all the... I actually saw a post the other day where you said Africa has some of the greatest fighters. The world just doesn't know it yet. Is that also why you feel a responsibility here, to bring up the name of African fighters?
Yeah, I've traveled all over the world. We are very hard people here, very physical and very hard. And the hardest working people in the world, I believe, are in Africa. We know what civil war is, what death is, what struggle is, what poverty is. Most of the world, not really, not to an extent of Africa, and hardship. And I see it every day. Guys that come in that are like just freaks of nature. They just need education and they need opportunities. Unfortunately, the education part, there's only a handful of coaches. Unfortunately, opportunity part, there's hardly any. And that's just due to environmental issues, where we are located, promotions, and government at the end of the day. I mean, in the US, it's so easy to be an athlete. It is so easy. When I hear guys complaining about it, I'm like, you have no idea how hard it is to be an athlete in Africa. For instance, look at the mainstream sports. I mean, are they getting helped? Majority of them eventually move overseas. Why? It's a much bigger thing than just we have skillful athletes. The rise of China or of the US, of Asia in UFC is coming now. We're just seeing the rise of Russia in the Eastern Bloc, and they're taking over. No one even knows the power of the rise of Africa. And yes, we have African champions in the UFC, but they're not actually from Africa. And I'm sorry to say that, and people get irritated at that. Are they from Nigeria? Yeah. But they're like second generation, live in Wisconsin, or DC or New York. They're not from Congo, Shaka, from Johannesburg, from Cape Town. You know what I mean? They don't live here and train here and go overseas. I mean, Francis Ngannou, we have tons of those guys running around our backyard, like tons of them, but they'll never get the opportunity.
I was actually having that discussion with my fiance the other day. We were just driving in the streets and I saw people begging and, people getting off taxis and stuff. And I was just thinking, we could have as many we don't know there's a Usain Bolt walking among these people. We don't know if that person was exposed to playing soccer when they were 12, the amazing athlete that they could have been. And it's sad because there's so much undiscovered talent in our country. And there's, as you say, because of the lack of opportunities, the lack of funding, none of these people could have that self-actualization of realizing actually what they could become, what they could have become. And it's sad to see that our country, in our hometown.
Is it getting better? Yeah. Opportunities will always get better over time. But is it where it should be? No way. I mean, any high-level, top mixed martial art athlete in this country has got my DNA in them. They've touched my mat. Some of them will never make it just because of the environment and the country they're in. Unfortunately, that is the truth. Are they great athletes? Could they be in the UFC? Yeah, 100%.
So now the split, well, not the split, but this new federation that Don has gone and joined with, because I'm quite inexperienced about combat sports and the UFC and the differences. So what is the difference now? So for the listeners that might not know.
So everyone knows UFC because it's mainstream and because of social media. But just like in anything, that might not be your path. It's not always the greatest promotion for you. And athletes now in the last 2 years have started understanding that. You join the UFC because it's kind of a tick in the box and a pride thing and an ego thing, and people will recognize you. But it's not where you're going to make your livelihood all the time. So places like Bellator, there's UFC fighters that have gone to Bellator making 10 times more money than they were in the UFC. In any promotion, if you're not in the cool group, you'll always be given the other hand. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. So PFL is one of the biggest promotions now in the world, and they run Grand Prix tournaments, $1 million tournaments. So in 3 fights, you can earn $1 million. What promotion can you do that in? Nothing. Yeah. Your first contract in the UFC, 10-10, 15-15, 18-18. Then you re-sign for your second contract. That's when guys re-sign and start making, a little bit more decent money. But in 3 fights in the PFR, you can make $1 million. That's unheard of. ONE FC is pretty similar. Bellator is pretty similar. And UFC is, has their favoritism as well, depending on how many bums you can put in the seat. So PFL now is in the US, and it's in Vegas and in Miami, Florida. This is their 3rd season. Don will be on the 4th season. And they run tournaments from lightweight all the way up to heavyweight. And it's a knockout promotion. So in terms of you fight, you win, you go to the next stage and so forth into the finals. Finals, $1 million.
Okay. And, you know, obviously we said South Africa is at a disadvantage, especially in terms of social media. And I know this, I've heard a lot of people discuss, you know, someone like Sean O'Malley. He's got an amazing following. He's a personality. And some people say he's not that great of a fighter to be where he is and getting the fights. Well, not the level of competition that he fights is always subpar to his skill. And his skill might not even be par to some of the people that actually deserve to be on that stage. And that's also the problem is it's social media and the social media presence that allows these fighters to be able to get on the stage and level that they're in.
100%. This is the life we're in now. Can't complain about it. You just got to learn how to work with it. You know, Sean O'Malley, who's the last guy he fought? Who was that guy?
It was a Mexican guy, I think.
See, most guys don't even know. So you're a superstar earning more money than guys that have been there maybe 5-6 years longer than you and got bigger records than you. But you compare his paycheck with that guy's paycheck, is going to be equal. No way. Plus, who was that guy? They brought him, he wasn't even signed with the UFC. So they brought that guy in, signed him just for Sean O'Malley.
But that guy could take a punch.
Correct.
I think you broke the record of the most received hits.
100%. But does it make sense?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Financially, only for Dana White, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But it's also, in this industry, it's who you are, who your manager is. Are you linked to the UFC? Are you in that group? If you're in that group, you're going to be like a Sean O'Malley. If you're not, you're going to have a harder journey.
And would you say it's possible to get in that group if you had to remain in South Africa?
Yeah. The combat sport's all about your management and which manager. Every manager has a good or bad relationship with different promotions. So we know there's certain promotions that favor certain management companies, regardless if they want to agree with it or not. And yeah, that's the truth. In Africa, 100%, the UFC is looking for that African superstar. That's what they're looking for. Because
if it's a white guy, would it have the same appeal? Because they wouldn't be able to sell it as much as as an African superstar.
Yeah, I don't know the answer for that, but I mean they already have, African, North African, Central African champions, but they don't live here. It's different. I think they want someone from South Africa to blow up, because in a year or two they want to bring UFC to South Africa. Yeah. It's a big thing. They're not going to put it in Central Africa, in Nigeria. It's not going to happen. Yeah. It's going to be here, just like they did in New Zealand, Australia. The biggest UFC PI is in China. You see what I mean? So once the UFC puts their footprint in the country, it blows up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it hasn't happened here.
Has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had a expansion of awareness lately, or is it just that
massive?
Okay, so I was going to say, is it maybe just me being, doing boxing and being more exposed to other types of combat, or is it? If
you go into any other country, you will see a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school nearly on every corner. Not a boxing school, not a kickboxing school. Brazilian, the sport is so big now that guys are becoming full-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes. I have one currently, and they're making great money. I mean, you're grappling for $20,000. You're grappling. You're not hitting someone. You're grappling for $20,000. It's not massive damage on your on your body. You can grapple super fight every weekend if you wanted to. That's what guys are doing. So it's in the US. It is ginormous, and it's massive with the female market, the kids market, everywhere. Big promotions now exploding. Social media is exploding with Gordon Ryan. You got a specific media company now, Flow Grappling, that is just for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's getting a lot. I mean, you're getting a lot of cross-pollination, MMA guys going into the grappling, super fights and vice versa. For me, that's going to be the future of combat sports to a certain degree. Remember, humans are very fickle, and they always want the most violence. That's why the Roman gladiators were so popular. So MMA will always be the number one because of the most amount of violence. But in terms of anything else, grappling is definitely on the rise here.
And I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan. He was talking about, thinking ahead with jiu-jitsu and, thinking 10 steps in advance. How is that possible? Obviously, it's experience as well, but how is it possible to think in advance is it because when you've got someone in a particular hold, you know how they would get out of it, so you know how to counter it? Or
It's like human chess. So if you play chess, you know you're going to start a sequence of moves, right? If I do this guy can only do X, Y, Z. So think of it as that. So if I hold you here, you can only do X, Y, Z. If you go to X, then that starts another sequence that I will start. So that's it's human chess, and it's amazing because everyone is different. There's so many different styles because of the amount of things that you can do. Nothing's impossible. A grown woman can beat a grown man equally. We see it every day. People think, oh, it'll never happen. We see it every day. Where if you put a grown woman in a boxing ring with gloves with a grown man, we know what will happen. Unfortunately, that is the truth. But if you give them the education of grappling, it's not always the case, and you can YouTube it and see it on many times of females beating guys. It's just human chess, man, and understanding sequences and the knowledge of fighting. Educated violence. That's where it comes from.
And obviously, I think also the growth of BJJ in South Africa is also maybe the self-defense aspect, and people, women especially, seeing the need, unfortunately, for their own ability to defend themselves in a country where rape and all those things are so prominent.
100%. Like a woman full-on jab crossing a man, will break her hands. Men break their hands. So why wouldn't a woman have a greater chance of breaking their hands? How many women are going to knock out a guy? Like, these are valuable things you got to think about. But a woman understanding how to arm drag to get onto a grown man's back and apply a rear naked choke strangle, that guy will go to sleep. She'll be able to, obtain victory over or dominance over a human like that, without any type of weaponry.
So the other branch and the other aspect, firearms and firearm proficiency and self-defense using a gun.
Yeah.
What is your role within that? Because I see obviously you're working with combat school, or what exactly do you do there?
Yeah, so like I have a degree in criminology, so the art of violence is a massive thing for me, and one of the pillars of violence is weaponry. So I train with a company called Bravo Tactical Africa, and they run all types of training with firearms. So I'm a big firearm enthusiast. I promote firearms a lot. Weapons are the equalizer, especially for females. You give a gun to a female and there's a guy standing in front of her, it's a big equalizer, especially in a country that we live in right here. Massive crime rate, rape, murder, serial killers, can go on and on. We can't rely on people to help us. There is no law enforcement here. You have to rely on your community, and retrospectively, you've got to rely on yourself. If you have a family, it's your obligation to protect your family. You can only do that with knowledge, and you can only do that with the skill set, and you can only do that with certain tools, and one of those tools are firearms.
And I've also seen, and it's nice for me to see that, because I've actually, one of my best friends is also, in attack training with dogs, and he's got a Belgian Malinois, and he actually just recently went to George, and he just got his level 1, whatever that first stage. Yeah. And it's just nice to see other people doing that with dogs, because at the end of the day, I would choose a dog over a human almost 99% of the time.
Yes.
And like that loyalty that dogs give you, and the happiness, and
no loyalty like a dog's loyalty. So yeah, I've been in the working dog world for about 10 years. I have my own two working dog service dogs, and I got them for my wife. My wife doesn't carry a firearm, so the next big thing was to get a working dog, a service dog, and she's the primary. And yeah, they do her thing. It's a lot of work. We train them every single day, and they go to professional training 3 times a week. So it's education, and it's consistency with that. But you get the results. So yeah, that's another level of violence that you can add in is different tools, weaponry, communication, navigation, animals, medical is the massive one. If you can't wrap your head around firearms, there's a whole lot of other aspects you can look into.
You mentioned medical, and I saw obviously some of that. I don't know if it was during the period with the riots and everything in Durban that was going on. And did you go there? Well, I saw something where it was like at least it was a photo. Maybe it was just around the same time.
I do a lot of. I'm trying to become sort of like a combat medic, but mainly for my own education. I work with a company called Deploy Concepts, and they've been in the industry for forever, and they're amazing. Not medical, navigation, whatever you want to know. They do those type of specialized skills and provide it the right way. So that's kind of my new obsession is medical. So I kind of work with them nearly every week, going through scenarios, work experience, that type of stuff. Yeah.
And some of those dummies they're very realistic. You know, sometimes I'll be watching a story, I'll be like, is this a real person?
Yeah, there's a $1 million dummies nearly, you know, and you got training aids that you actually put on real humans. So that type of training is the training that you're only going to get in a governmental institute. And this company provides that to obviously government institutes as well as civilians.
Okay. And obviously everything that you're interested in is almost military related. Would you, if you had to go back now, be like, I would love to have joined the Marines or, Yeah,
100%. When I was in the US, there was a time that I was basically going to sign up for the Marine Corps. I still don't understand why I didn't, because 100% there was a path that I should be in and should have been in. But my life, I understand where I am in my life now, because if I went there, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So what I'm doing is all the military training, just not in the military.
Yeah.
So I've got all the guys that are in that industry. I'm around them all the time. I'm getting all the skills you would in that industry privately.
And you can still go home every day to your wife, which is
100%.
At the end of the day, it's better.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get guys to understand. Like, you don't have to go to the military to get educated on violence. You can do it right now. There is so many talented guys out there that are willing to provide that knowledge. And we live in a country that has a lot of talent because of our history, and people don't do it. And I don't understand, because in a country like we are in, it's necessary to do it. I mean, I'm sure you don't know, majority of your mates have probably been in an incident as well as yourself. All of us that are listening, myself, we all know someone that has been in a violent crime.
Yeah, and it's sad. I mean, I literally last week Friday heard of two individual incidents, two separate incidences that happened on the exact same day, involving someone with a gun holding up someone else. And both those incidents, this person was by themselves. Fortunately, both times, no one was hurt. Yeah. They got away unharmed. But at the end of the day, what other country, there's probably a lot, but how many countries will you hear as an individual about two people that you know on the same day that were held up?
Well, this is the thing. I get very irritated when people go, but there's crime everywhere. Yes, there's crime everywhere, but there's not crime everywhere like Africa. They don't want to accept that what happens here is not normal. We make it normal. For us, it's normal because we live with it every day. So it's normal to us. But when you go overseas, it's not normal. The incidents that we read and hear every day, if they were overseas, it would be a big, big thing. Yeah, it's a normal. Cash in transit, normal. Shootout in a shopping center, it's normal. We have the highest serial killer rate in the world. Oh, really? I didn't even know that. Highest rape? Yeah, because now media is saying so. But that's been going on for years. It's not normal. It's not the same violence as other countries. We have the highest violent crime in the world. You don't get house robberies where they're torturing people. That's not normal. That's because of other concepts that have happened in our country. But also, people will only do bad things to other people because they can. and because there's no consequence. If people had the skills and stood up to that, well, then it would be less. Because as a criminal, I want to work on lesser, weaker individuals. But if our community didn't allow that and were stronger, it would be much harder. They would think twice of doing things like this. But unfortunately, our government makes us weak, makes us fearful, takes tools away from us to defend ourselves. So that's why it's so easy now to be a criminal here, as well as our justice system is so stuffed up. So,
and you would say if you're against, maybe if someone's against firearms, maybe the best thing is to get a working dog. Or at least to maybe equip yourself with skills to be able to have some sort of self-defense.
100%. There's so many other aspects that I feel you eventually will understand why a firearm is needed, and it's our right to have that. Just because who you're going to rely on? Call the cops. What cops? How long are you going to wait? Security company. Okay. So you're relying on other people, but you can't rely on yourself. That doesn't make sense. Why don't you equip yourself with those skills? Why are you relying on some? Those people are not there. It takes 10 minutes. It takes 10 seconds for someone to shoot your partner in the head. Are you willing to take that risk in a country that we're in now? So, I mean, there's so many other aspects of doing it. And I'm not saying become a Rambo, become special forces, like a movie. I enjoy educating myself. This has been my life since I was young. But for general people, just be a little bit educated. Find out what other things you can do and provide yourself and your family with it. Most people only wake up once something bad has happened to them or their family. Then they wake up, then they start looking. But by then it's too late.
I saw actually on the stick on your car that snakes in transit.
Yeah.
Are you involved with reptiles?
Yeah, so that's like kind of my next project going forward. Yeah. Dogs, I was very fearful of dogs. That's why I got into dogs and service dogs or working dogs, vice versa with snakes. Yeah.
Why do you think you were fearful of dogs? Was it maybe...
I never grew up with dogs. So in Asia, like in South Africa, everyone has a dog.
Mm.
In Asia, we don't. We live in apartments. We don't have dogs. So I never really grew up around those animals. So if you don't know, you're always fearful. You feel for something because you're not educated on it. That's all.
It's the same that goes with guns. Those people that are scared of guns or think that you shouldn't own a gun or whatever probably just have never handled one, so they don't know.
100%. Once you educate them, they start changing their views, There's so many civilians that are saving other civilians as well as themselves because of a tool, These guys that are like gun-free South Africa, where were they in the riots?
Yeah.
When chaos starts, who are you going to look up to? We've literally seen the movie The Purge in South Africa. We literally seen that. But it still hasn't woken people up in terms of where we are and where we live. This country is amazing, but just understand what you need to do.
So if someone, be it a female that maybe wants to learn self-defense, a female that maybe just wants to learn jiu-jitsu in general, or a man that maybe wants to compete, where can they reach you? Where can they find you?
Fight Fit Militia, any of our affiliates, any of those gyms will be a good gym for you to get educated properly. Firearms, Bravo Tactical Africa, the poly concepts, medical, and anything else. Yeah, those companies are the companies I surround myself with. I really believe in those companies, and if you're in those companies, you'll always see me.
Awesome. Richie, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, bro. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, and thank you guys for listening.